Entergy is proud to support programming on LPB and greener practices that preserve Louisiana.
The goal of our environmental and sustainability initiatives really is to ensure that our kids and future generations can be left with a cleaner planet.
Additional support provided by the Fred B. and Ruth B. Ziegler Foundation and the Ziegler Art Museum located in Jennings City Hall. The museum focuses on emerging Louisiana artists and is an historical and cultural center for Southwest Louisiana. And the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting, with support from viewers like you.
We still have almost 40,000 people a year in this country who get HIV infection every year.
A breakthrough plan to end AIDS in the U.S.
We're true to who we are.
The Salvation Army, more than 150 years of helping those in need.
The scary thing about it to a lot of us is we'll let market be there when the trade dispute ends.
Uncertainty and concerns keeping farmers up at night.
Hi everyone, I'm Natasha Williams.
And I'm Andre Moreau. Much more on those top stories in a moment on this week's edition of SWY. But first, a plan from Governor John Bel Edwards to put more money into higher education.
He didn't give dollar figures, but he told the University of Louisiana System Board Thursday he wants to raise spending on public college campuses, continuing to invest and not cutting money to higher ed.
The governor says it's essential for us to compete with neighboring states. It's essential to move our state forward. It will be part of his new budget proposal to lawmakers early next year. And now we'll look at some other news that's making headlines across Louisiana. Many of the branch locations of the state's offices of motor vehicles remain closed this week as state workers continue to respond to that cyber attack that hit computer servers 2 weeks ago. OMV Commissioner Karen St. Germain says about 28% of the offices statewide were up and running. A big problem, no office is functioning at capacity yet. Louisiana native Dan Brouillette is the new secretary for the Department of Energy. Senator Bill Cassidy praised the hiring, calling Brouillette a rock star. Cassidy says he exercises power intelligently, not emotionally, and will be extraordinary in his new role. Brouillette was born in Assumption Parish and has deep ties to the state and its energy sector. The small central Louisiana town of Ball finally has an elected mayor. Gail Wilking is now sworn in and on the job. Wilking, a Republican, won a November election in a town do-over. Voters chose Roy Hebron as mayor last year, but the Democrat was sidelined by a constitutional restriction on felons holding state office. Hebron was less than 2 years removed from a hurricane-related fraud conviction when he ran. The Caddo Parish Commission has finally approved the money needed to remove a Confederate monument. The cost will be almost $83,000. The commission had allocated $500,000 to remove the 30-foot monument in Shreveport. It was erected in 1905 on the north side of the Caddo Courthouse lawn. ICE agents say officers inside the Wynn Correctional Center in Winfield pepper sprayed migrants who were protesting over prolonged detention. Spokesman Brian Cox said about 50 migrants were subdued. Family members of the people detained at Wynn said some migrants had refused to go back to their cell and were sleeping outside. Here is LSU quarterback Joe Burrow and the Cajunized spelling of his name for senior night introductions in Tiger Stadium. Burrow, his brilliant play, and his love affair with LSU is perhaps the greatest sports story of the year. The Tigers are a perfect 12-0 and face Georgia Saturday in the SEC championship game. Burrow this week won the Unitas Award as the nation's best quarterback, is the favorite to win the Heisman, and experts consider LSU a lock for the college football playoffs. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi announced Thursday that the House is moving forward to draft articles of impeachment against President Donald Trump.
In a prepared statement, Pelosi told reporters, "Our democracy is at stake. The president leaves us no choice but to do this act." Pelosi delivered the historic announcement as Democrats push toward a vote possibly before Christmas. It came after an all-day hearing Wednesday with 4 constitutional scholars.
Now, 3 of those who testified called the president's conduct with Ukraine an impeachable offense. Professor Jonathan Turley of the George Washington School of Law called for more time. Take a listen.
The facts are uncontested. The president abused his power for his own personal political benefit at the expense of our national security by withholding military aid and crucial Oval Office meeting in exchange for an announcement of an investigation into his political rival. Our democracy is what is at stake. The president leaves us no choice but to act because he is trying to corrupt, once again, the election for his own benefit. The president has engaged in abuse of power, undermining our national security and jeopardizing the integrity of our elections.
Impeachments require a certain period of saturation and maturation. That is, the public has to catch up. I'm not prejudging what your record would show, but if you rush this impeachment, you're going to leave half the country behind. And certainly that's not what the framers wanted. You have to give the time to build a record. This isn't an impulse buy item. You're trying to remove a duly elected president of the United States, and that takes time, it takes work. But at the end, if you look at Nixon, which was the gold standard in this respect, the public did catch up. They originally did not support impeachment, but they changed their mind. You changed their mind. And so did, by the way, the courts, because you allowed these issues to be heard in the courts.
He had to announce the investigations. He's talking about President Zelensky. He had to announce the investigations. He didn't actually have to do them, as I understood it. And then he said, I never heard, Mr. Goldman, anyone say that the investigations had to start or had to be completed. The only thing I heard from Mr. Giuliani or otherwise was they had to be announced in some form. And what I took that to mean was this was not about whether Vice President Biden actually committed corruption or not. This was about injuring somebody who the president thinks of as a particularly hard opponent, and that's for his private beliefs. Because if I can say one last thing about the interests of the United States, the Constitution of the United States does not care whether the next president of the United States is Donald J. Trump or any one of the Democrats or anybody running on a third party. The Constitution is indifferent to that.
Louisiana's leaders in D.C. have offered a far different reaction to all this. Senator Bill Cassidy gave his take in an interview with WWL Radio on Thursday. Here's a clip from that.
You know that she was coached and they videoed her to make sure that she had the right demeanor so that people thought that this was not something they were doing for political purposes, but it's with great sadness. You know, there's such a kind of sort of give me a break about it that I'm just like, it's hard to keep a straight face as she's getting up there acting like she's sad about it.
Now, what's being called a once-in-a-generation opportunity to end the HIV epidemic in the U.S. A program called Ready, Set, Prep, spearheaded by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. It centers around making available at no cost HIV prevention drugs known as PrEP for pre-exposure prophylaxis. Dr. Brent Giroir, acting commissioner of the FDA and the Assistant Secretary of Health, was in Baton Rouge, and we spoke with him. Dr. Giroir, it's great to have you here. And with your name, you have to be from Louisiana.
I absolutely am. It's great to be back in my home state. I grew up on the West Bank of New Orleans, and it's always great to be back here.
It's fantastic to have you, and important that you're here. So right off the bat, what is Ready, Set, Prep?
Thank you. So Ready, Set, Prep is an absolutely essential and bold component of our administration's overall plan to end the HIV/AIDS epidemic in America. There are 4 components to that. Number 1, diagnose everyone living with HIV as early as possible. Number 2, link them to treatment. Number 3, investigate outbreaks like those that occur with IV drug use. And number 4, which is prevention. And this is where Ready, Set, Prep comes in. There are a number of ways we can prevent HIV, but one of them is with a medication called PrEP, or pre-exposure prophylaxis.
That's really probably the key to this, because the things you've mentioned, you would think we've sort of been trying to do those things all along, but maybe didn't have some of the components here?
Well, we haven't done as well as we could. Okay. It still takes much too long. There are about 165,000 people in the country living with HIV that have not been diagnosed. So until they're diagnosed and treated, they could still transmit the virus to other people. But PrEP is a medication, very simple, 1 pill a day. There's 2 forms of it, Truvada or Descovy, that can protect you from getting HIV from sexual contact by over 99%. And our program that we announced this week is that PrEP will be absolutely free to anyone who is uninsured.
Well, that's huge, because
It
that
is
has not been
absolutely
the case,
huge.
because it's a very expensive drug.
It is a very expensive drug. It can be about $1,700 per month. Now, if you have insurance or most Medicaid plans, you can get it with very low deductible. But if you have no insurance, and we estimate that there could be 150 to 175,000 people in the country who don't have insurance and need PrEP, it's absolutely prohibitive. So this is very easy. You can go to our website, getyourprep.com, and enroll in the program. If you are HIV negative, if you have a valid prescription for PrEP, and you do not have prescription drug insurance, you can get free PrEP.
How's this being paid for?
Well, this is the good part of it, or one of the many good parts of it, is that Gilead Sciences, the maker of both Truvada and Descovy, we negotiated an historic donation from them that they donated enough PrEP for up to 200,000 people per year up till 2030. This could be a $10 to $15 billion donation. So we're using that free donation, and the government is just covering the cost of the administration of the program, like some acquisition and other fees. The other part that we announced is that Walgreens, CVS, and Rite Aid are donating all their dispensing fees starting no later than March of 2020, which means the cost to the government goes way down, which means we could put more money into our Ending HIV program.
I can see why this is really the biggest thing that's happened, maybe with AIDS prevention and attacking this problem, which has been around for way too long.
Yes, we still have almost 40,000 people a year in this country who get HIV infection every year. That's way too much. Even in Louisiana, we know that that number is over 1,000 individuals contract HIV every year. And there's no reason for that, because we know how to diagnose, we know how to treat, we know how to prevent. And the President's initiative announced at the State of the Union address that was spearheaded by our department, Health and Human Services. We aim to end the HIV epidemic in the U.S. within 10 years. We believe we could decrease the number of new cases by 75% within 5 years and by 90% within 10 years.
Baton Rouge and New Orleans are considered geographic hotspots. Baton Rouge has for years been ranked #1 per capita, just recently learned number 10 now, so that's a good thing. It's not a football poll, but a lower ranking is better in this case. But you're here, and you're also making stops in these hotspots, I suppose.
We are. So there's two very special things about East Baton Rouge. So first of all, you pointed out correctly that 50% of new cases of HIV in this country occur in only 48 jurisdictions, as well as Washington, D.C. and San Juan, Puerto Rico. 2 of those jurisdictions are Orleans Parish and East Baton Rouge Parish. So we are focusing our resources, and we have asked for almost $300 million in new funding in the upcoming budget. So we're focusing our resources on these communities. But East Baton Rouge Parish is also special because they're one of our 4 jumpstart sites in the country that we started funding this year now to implement their programs. And the reason why we did this is, number one, because there's a need here, but number 2, East Baton Rouge has shown progress. So we wanted to jumpstart areas that had a problem but was showing progress and had the organization. So if we can infuse some money in so the parish and the local health department and the community organizations can hire individuals, can pay for enhanced testing, then we think we can really move the needle very quickly.
Well, it's fantastic news, and it's huge news also, so thanks for sharing it with us, especially since it's just happening. It's just been announced this week.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Now, for more information, go to hiv.gov. Tons of material there and info on the initiative to end the AIDS epidemic.
This time of year, the bell ringers in front of some of your favorite stores are as familiar as your favorite holiday carols. They are raising money for one of the oldest Christian charities in the nation, the Salvation Army. The more than 1.7 million strong organization is busy lifting, helping, and saving families from poverty and many other societal issues 365 days a year.
You could say Major Donald Tekautz, commanding officer of the Salvation Army of Baton Rouge, grew up in the Army. It's his family's life mission.
I was born and raised in Kansas. My parents were officers there for 18 years. I then did the first 16 years of my career there.
But he knows all too well he's not in Kansas anymore.
We're seeing that in the last census, the homeless population is growing. We know where Louisiana ranks in poverty in this country.
Their headquarters in Baton Rouge is smack dab in the middle of what could be poverty central.
70805, 70807 are the poorest zip codes in the state of Louisiana. So here we are in the midst of trying to help people in just the right place we need to be.
Those familiar bells ringing at businesses across the state this time of year are helping to raise money for those who can't help themselves.
Sometimes we're just seen as a Christmas charity this time of year as we're out, but the truth is we're all the time. We have a 40-bed homeless shelter here that we really, though, serve about 60, 65 guys every night. We're at overflow almost every night in our shelter and don't turn anybody away so that they have a safe place to sleep. Dinner in the evening, breakfast in the morning. We also provide 10 of those beds to homeless veterans. So if a veteran comes in, he's guaranteed a bed that night and a place to sleep. We also have a 52-bed long-term drug and alcohol program here on our campus. So tonight we'll have 52 guys who are involved in a recovery process. We're a work therapy program, so they work during the day at some aspect of what we do here, and it provides them some work training. And then they do classes at night for recovery.
The Army also has several other programs. One called Pathways to Hope works with families to break cycles of generational poverty. They also have a number of children and youth programs and emergency programs to help families with food and utility shortfalls. All these programs are year-round and have to be funded, many through donations given by businesses and regular folks in the community who care.
We're very fortunate that we have a lot of great corporate sponsors who help us and do some things. We do events, our gala in the spring. This time of year we're out ringing bells. We do a lot of through Facebook and social media.
Social media is now an essential part of their fundraising process. Like this ad getting dozens of responses as the Army put out an all-call for much-needed winter items, hats, scarves, coats, and gloves. And help coming from more traditional sources.
Our family store is a great way that we raise money, so when people donate those clothes, it really does change somebody's life and makes a difference. So there's lots of ways. Through this time of year, people think about, maybe donating a car, maybe they have some stock or, a year-end gift.
The Salvation Army, now over 150 years old, continues its efforts to remain relevant. Major Tekautz says they do so by staying true to their original mission.
Several years ago, Peter Drucker, the business guru guy, said that the Salvation Army was the most effective organization in the world because for 150 years we've stayed true to our one mission. Preach the gospel of Jesus, share the good news, help people. Those two things are never going to change.
He says he believes their mission resonates with millennials, the Gen X's, and Gen Y's.
They like social justice and they're interested in social justice, and they can come on and be hands-on. We just had huge numbers of volunteers last week when we fed 3,000 people with a Thanksgiving dinner, and they help fix those meals and box them up and deliver them, and it's a lot of people who made that day happen.
And he says despite living in times where despair seems to be an everyday occurrence, at the Army they find joy in the many lives that are changed because of what they do day in and day out.
You see that kid who went off to camp and suddenly life is just different because they've been able to see life from a different perspective, and it gives them a push to stay in school and to do better. Our kids who come to our youth programs and stay involved and they're learning an instrument and they're learning a way to express themselves that gives them some joy and peace in their life. When you see the mom come to our Pathway of Hope program and finally begin to see that their dream can come true, that they don't have to live like this anymore and their children don't have to live like that anymore. When you watch a man who's been addicted to drugs for 15 or 20 years and all of a sudden something clicks and he comes to his graduation and he holds his certificate and he gets a token to carry in his pocket and suddenly he's free. I suppose if you look at all the problems, you can always find the problems. But if you want to look for the joy and the good news, there's always joy. And so that's what you just have to keep your focus.
The Salvation Army says 86 cents of every dollar goes to direct aid, and they work to keep their administrative costs very low.
State farmers continue receiving help from the government as the China trade war drags on. Big in the news this week, the $180 million going to farmers in Louisiana. That's what our state received in the president's multi-billion-dollar bailout. The money offers help to offset losses for soybeans, for example, not sold. But some say it's not nearly enough, only a Band-Aid. The Department of Agriculture says 75% of that $180 million went to soybean farmers. We went to West Baton Rouge to hear from a farmer and a Farm Bureau Federation leader.
We got this. This is all wooded property and sloughs running through here, wetland, almost wetland type property.
It was about 40 years ago when Donald Schexnayder and his brothers converted that forest into this fertile acreage, then later expanded into neighboring parishes.
We grow soybeans, corn, wheat, and oats. We have about 3,000 acres altogether.
Schexnayder says soybeans make up about 2,200 of those acres. The trade war with China has taken a toll. It's been going on since June of 2018.
Prices dropped 20%. It's been a struggle since you never know where the market should be because of that tariff situation. We lost 60% of over 60% of all the soybeans in 2017 was sold to China. So it's a lot of eggs going in one place, a lot of commodity moving there. So when you take that market away and have that strain on it, you know, it drops down. The scary thing about it to a lot of us is, will that market be there when the trade dispute ends? Will they still be our trading partner? Or did they make alliances with South America and other places for their crops? The great thing about the administration, they had the foresight to see, okay, once we had this tariff put into place to keep China from stealing intellectual properties and having good, fair trade with China, he had the foresight to say, okay, it's going to affect the market. We know that. And he had this policy set into place ahead of time to say, we're going to support our farmers because we know it's going to be affected. So, and he came through with it. Last year was a different type of program. This time they tweaked it a little bit. So it worked a little bit better and more efficient this year. Yeah.
You're talking about federal money?
The federal money that we got.
To offset your losses?
Yeah, the market facilitation program which we are receiving, yeah.
What's the biggest concern about not knowing exactly what's going to happen or when going forward?
We would love to see it ended sooner than later. You know, we've been hoping for this last year it would have been finished. We're still hoping that, you know, the administration finds a way to work out this dispute as soon as possible. I think they would like it too. China, I know, would love to see it. It's anybody's guess. We still support the president and what he's doing. We know we need free and fair trade with all countries.
But is it difficult to support when you're hurting?
It's a little bit difficult to say, okay, because we struck going through this, it's harder to pay bills if you don't have the money.
Andy Brown is National Affairs Coordinator for Louisiana Farm Bureau and says the ongoing uncertainty hurts financially and emotionally.
This has been going on longer than most in the agricultural sector would hope, but also many of our members and farmers see it as a necessary evil. There's been the same commodity prices for decades now with very rapidly increasing costs. So the profit margin on an acre of soybeans in Louisiana has been shrinking. And some of those parameters are because we don't have fair trade with other countries. So we've seen tariffs as a mechanism to try to combat that from this Trump administration, but that's what we're living with, and we're trying to negotiate it the best we can.
If an agreement does not come, if talks fail, is there a plan B?
Farmers will adjust. It takes time, but it's not something that 1 year to the next that a farmer like Donald Schexnayder can jump into growing some different crop. And When you lose one of the top world markets like China for multiple commodities, there may not be enough other markets to make up for that loss. It'll mitigate some of it, hopefully, but we'd like to see business with China just like we'd like to see it with Mexico and Canada and other agreements that are being negotiated right now. So the sooner the better, but we'll continue to work with this administration and any administration to try to get these guys something to get them to the next farm loan the next year to continue doing business to help this nation. It's a crop that China certainly needs. It's a product that has a lot of byproducts from it, from oil to meal to feed for animals that we consume, to many other things that you don't necessarily think of in household items and others, your vehicles, lots of things. So it's a very it's a great crop for a lot of climates. That's why you see it grown across the nation in different areas, but it's important to Louisiana for sure. It's our second largest row crop, if you will, behind sugarcane in value, but it takes a mix. It takes diversity to stay alive in this ag economy.
And we'll keep you posted as this situation develops. That's our show for this week, everyone. Remember, you can watch anything LPB anytime, wherever you are, with our brand new app.
Download it for free from your app store. This upgraded version features news, public affairs, documentaries, and how-tos, plus a whole lot more programs. And please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
For all of us at Louisiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Andre Moreau.
And I'm Natasha Williams. Thanks for watching.
Until next time, that's the state we're in.
Entergy is proud to support programming on LPB and greener practices that preserve Louisiana.
The goal of our environmental and sustainability initiatives really is to ensure that our kids and future generations can be left with a cleaner planet.
Additional support provided by the Fred B. and Ruth B. Ziegler Foundation and the Ziegler Art Museum located in Jennings City Hall. The museum focuses on emerging Louisiana artists and is an historical and cultural center for Southwest Louisiana. And the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting, with support from viewers like you.